Hey everyone, Andrew here, and time for another comic review. This one I read and didn't actually want to do a review on, mostly because it is so WTF that I don't think I can truly explain how insane it gets towards the end. But it is bizarre enough and weird enough that I kind of need to talk about it, if for nothing else than to get it out of my system so I never have to think about it again. When I started the book club, one of the first books that we did was Fight Club by Chuck Palahniuk. And it's a book that, the book itself is fine. It's got some interesting concepts to it, interesting stuff. I think the film is actually better, a little bit better. And that it keeps a good thing where it's like Tyler Durden. Like, for me, the book, I hated Tyler Durden pretty quickly. And the film does a better job of making him a somewhat likable persona that as you get to know more and more about it, you realize how crazy he is. And then eventually, when it turns out he's this evil, spoiler warning for a movie that's 20 years old almost at this point, but is the split personality of the main character and has been using him to try and blow up buildings and cause mass damage and destruction. But the book, just makes him, I couldn't stand him right off the bat. So, and there were certain little things that just kind of didn't work. But it works fine. It's actually a pretty decent read. I just think the film's a little bit better. And I've read the book, and I'm like, all right, good. This is done. I don't need any more of this. I'm pretty satisfied with that. And once again, I'm in the minority in that department, because apparently a lot of people wanted a sequel. And the author clearly didn't, after having read this, but I guess he got convinced into writing it. So we get Fight Club 2, or also known as the Tranquility Gambit. And this is actually a comic book. It's 10 chapters making up, or 10 comics making up one omnibus. It is definitely WTF. And it's coming off a thing that in itself is pretty bizarre and out there, but it at least has some stuff that works well with it and is somewhat more grounded in reality, whereas this is really gets really crazy the further it goes in. So the main plot of Fight Club 2, it takes place 10 years after the events of the first book. And our main character, who is played by Edward Norton, is now known as Sebastian, and he is married to Marla, and they have a kid. And Sebastian does do nothing office work and is on multiple drugs. He's basically highly drugged and to keep the Tyler Durden persona from being able to rise up. And he's also seeing a psychiatrist twice a week to keep Tyler all this stuff. And he's clearly kind of miserable. Kind of not, because of the drugs you can't really feel anything at that point. But the one who's definitely miserable is Marla. She has grown to be quite miserable, mostly because she's married to Sebastian. And she never particularly loved Sebastian. She was always in love with the other guy, that being Tyler. And she just wants to have that back, that passion, that fire. And so she starts replacing Sebastian's pills with placebos. And basically, so that way when Sebastian falls asleep at night, Tyler wakes up and they have sex. Turns out this isn't the only event that's leading to Tyler reawakening and coming out of the woodwork, because the psychologist that Sebastian has been seeing hypnotizes Sebastian, and during the time that he's hypnotized, reawakens Tyler and lets him be in control of the body for 1 hour. This allows Tyler to keep his Fight Club militia still in working and trying to cause mass damage and change and uproot the world. And during one of these sessions, he and Tyler meet in a middle spot in their brain where they're talking to each other, and it's clear that Tyler has a plan and that he wants to hurt Sebastian, and he tells him, "I'm going to take out everything that you love." And Sebastian wakes up and runs home, and the house is on fire. Marla is out front, but their son is missing. And we'd only seen a shot or two of the son, and he was talking like Tyler. He was talking about how you can use, fat to make bombs, and being a really creepy kid. And he was supposedly still in the house with the dog. But Sebastian knows, right away, this is not the case. It's even though they find a body of a kid in the wreckage, Sebastian is 100% believes that Tyler has kidnapped his son. And that he has to go and re-enter Tyler's group to try to get in to figure out where in the world Tyler has stolen his son. So he tells Marla that he needs her help, that he needs her to do something for him. And she's like, "What?" And he's like, "I need you to hit me as hard as you can." She's like, "What?" "I need you to hit me as hard as you can." She's like, "I'm not doing that." It's like, "Oh, you won't hit me, but you can sleep with the other persona and let him kill our son." And she punches him really hard in the ear. And he's like, it's like, again, hard in the face this time. And she keeps hitting him, but it's not doing enough damage. And he's like, "This isn't working." She's like, "You're right." And goes into the bathroom and gets the lid from the toilet, the ceramic one on the back, and smashes his face with it, causing him to be completely scarred up and damaged. Sebastian then goes back to the house that him and Tyler started the fight clubs and all that stuff with, and pretends to be an average person trying to get back into the center and back into Tyler's group. Marla, during this, spends a lot of time at her support group, but much like the first film, she doesn't go to support groups of things that she actually has, so she ends up in this support group that is all children who have the disease that causes them to age faster. So they're all supposed to be 7 or 8, but they have bodies of 80 or 90-year-olds. But that might not be the case, because we find out later that the one that's hanging out with her the most is actually an 80-year-old woman who had cancer in the past and had been part of a cancer support group and had met Sebastian in that support group. It's really weird. It doesn't have much purpose other than a couple of really bizarre jokes and references to the first film or book. There's a lot of references to the first book in this, which you can kind of see why, but it's also I don't know. I think the author was trying to recreate or recapture something that he thought the fans would want. So she convinces them to help her, and they go to this house that they're like, "We can get advice here in advance of what to do." And they knock on the door, and it's the house of the author, Chuck Palahniuk. And he's there with his writing club. And so he's literally talking to his creation about the story and what's going on, and trying to tell her, what to do and how to get through this. And ends up giving her advice. So what she ends up doing is she gets the kids to go to a Make-A-Wish Foundation type location and gets them to be, basically, they show up and they'll be like, "I want to go to Afghanistan and I want an AK-47. They're like, "Don't you want to go to Disneyland?" "No, I want this." And forces it. So literally it's Marla and these old people who may or may not be actual children jumping out of planes and shooting a bunch of Middle Eastern people. This is only the beginning of the weird stuff. Sebastian has shaven his head and is now in one of the fight clubs, and he has to fight because it's his first night. as far as they know, and keeps trying to get people to fight with him, but they keep calling him old man and not worth the effort. Someone finally agrees to fight him, and there's this big, hulking mass of a person, and it turns out that this person is a man named Angel Face, who Sebastian had met during the first Fight Club, had been this very young, very pretty person that Sebastian beat the ever-living crap out of just to damage his pretty face. And Angel Face gets his revenge and beats the ever-living crap out of Sebastian and hits him super hard in the face and causing him to pass out. And immediately Tyler Durden takes over. And Tyler Durden snaps his fingers and everyone stops and he stands up and he goes over to Angel Face and he's like, "What was the run rule? And you do not punch me in the face!" And he proceeds to beat Angel Face to death. Yeah, and you get this idea that Tyler Durden has planned a lot of this out. He has an almost complete and utter control of these situations by not supposedly having full access to everything all the time. And it becomes clear, basically, because Sebastian ends up at the psychologist's office, and the psychologist reveals that Tyler wants him to kill Sebastian, but he wants to help Sebastian get his son back. So him and the psychologist go to where they're holding his son. And it's revealed that Sebastian has been with Tyler and Sebastian have been together longer than they've seen. But he has known Tyler since childhood. And that Tyler set his parents' house on fire, killing Sebastian's parents. Not only that, but that Tyler isn't just Sebastian's psychosis. He is a genetic, malignant force that has corrupted this family line going back at least to Sebastian's great-grandfather. And that it keeps showing up and infecting the life of the person and then moving on to the younger one. And just keep constantly living forever, causing more and more damage with the more control it can get over the person. Which is why he stole Sebastian's son, because now he can transfer to a new body and become that Tyler, and Tyler can now become the son and take over. Yeah, it's bizarre. And then Sebastian and his son end up getting in a fist fight, and he manages to get Tyler to let go of his control over Sebastian's son, and basically they end up in this underground bunker Tyler had been building because Tyler has been collecting yellow cake to make nuclear bombs to cause Armageddon. Manages to run into Marla, who is attacking the force from the other side, and she pulls the gun on them and is like, "How do I know that you're Sebastian?" And she's like, "What do you expect me to do?" And she's like, "Kiss me." And Sebastian kisses her, and she's like, "Okay, you're definitely my husband," which tells me that he sucks at kissing, or there was no passion, or whatever. It's kind of funny, kind of like, oh, yeah, this is the actual couple that we're supposed to be rooting for, but they don't actually seem to be a good couple. One of Tyler's minions manages to set off the nuclear bomb, and all of life is blinked out of existence, and Sebastian and his families are crushed under the debris. The end. I'm kind of kidding. Because this is literally, right after this section, it pulls back to the house of Chuck Palahniuk with his writer friends, and he's like, "That's how it ends." And they're all like, "No, it's not." He's like, "No, yeah, that's how I'm going to end this." It's what this has been building towards. It's the perfect finale, and it lets all of this be what it's supposed to be. It's the way the series should end. And they're like, "No, it's not." And so they grab him, and they basically drag him kicking and screaming to the beach. And it's like, "Oh, look, here's Sebastian and everyone coming out of the cave. They're all fine and happy." And it's like, the world didn't end. It's like, why? Because we tricked Tyler with fake bombs that weren't actually yellow cake bombs. They weren't real. And then it's like, what? No, he's like, and Chuck Palahniuk's like, this is not what I want. This is not the way it should go. And they're like, well, we're the fans. This is what we say it should be. And Tyler shows up and talks to Palahniuk, and they go off and walk down the beach, and Palahniuk is like, this has no integrity. This is just bullshit. And it's like, yeah. And it's like, okay. And Tyler's like, all right. Tyler asks him what should happen next. What should be the third Fight Club? And it's like, Palahniuk's like, all right. How about Marla gets pregnant again, and this time it's your son, but this time she'll have an abortion, like that joke I made in the original book. And then Tyler proceeds to shoot Palahniuk in the face. It's what I can't even explain or describe how completely baffling and confusing this ending is. It is the most second most meta thing I've ever come across. Actually, it's probably the most meta thing, because it's such a testament and such a writing of someone who clearly didn't want to write this. He clearly did not want to do another Fight Club. And this is just him, complaining and being unhappy about the fans that made him write this. And it's bizarre, and it's flawed, and it's got a lot of stuff that doesn't really work. And there's so many little things that just pieces and stuff that just don't make any sense or don't work really well, or just hurt my brain trying to remember them, because I'm trying so actively to forget them. And the problem is this whole meta ending of the author being unhappy with this and the way it came out and the way his story has changed how people talk about him and about his stories. It's been done before. It's not that original. I've read this before. There's a really great comic series out there called Mouse by Art Spiegelman. And it's two omnibuses, basically. The first one is him as the character. He's playing himself, asking his father about what happened during the events of World War II, because his family was Jewish and lived in Poland, and how they survived the Holocaust and all that. And the whole first story is just, Germans coming in and taking over, and it ends with his parents. The first one ends with his parents ending up in an internment camp, and that's where it ends. And you can kind of tell he didn't want to write a sequel, and that there wasn't a plan. And then he wrote Mouse 2, which was writing about what happened to his father and mother during the internment camps. And there's this part in the middle of the book where Spiegelman is talking about the weight of the first book's success had on him, and how he can just feel the eyes and the souls of all of the Jewish people that died during the Holocaust just weighing on him, and their stories just haunting him, and not knowing if he did the right thing in telling the story, or if it lessens their story, or it's just not good. And it works really well in that story because it has weight and depth to it. Fight Club 2, it has some weight to it, some depth, but it also kind of comes off as a writer whining about his fans making his book not what he wanted it to be. It has it's fine. It's an interesting choice, but it's so bizarre, and everything leading up to that is so insane, and just, I'm like, somehow I don't understand how in the world Tyler Durden could be passed down generation to generation, unless he's a gypsy curse or something. It just doesn't make any sense to me. I understand that there's psychosis and genetics, but a very specific psychosis that remembers what he did to all of the previous generations, yeah, it's too bizarre and weird for me. And they have this whole thing where it's they keep bringing up references to the first book. It's like, because at the end, they're rescued. One of the people, the being that ends up rescuing them is basically a character known as Man-Tits from the first one. He's just a really fat guy that he got killed in the first book. And they brought him back, and he just has this indent in his head where part of his brain is missing or something. It makes no sense. But again, I guess if the film version of Sebastian could survive a bullet through the mouth, through the back of the skull, I guess you can survive getting your brain smashed in. It doesn't make much sense at all. And I don't understand why they chose the choices that they made, and I can't even give this the right context of this because it's so confusing and so bizarre. And one of the weird things with this is there would be scenes where there's dialogue written, and then part of the imagery would just cover the written parts. And I don't. It's like none of this matters, or is it just something cool they thought would be interesting? I don't know. It's weird. It does it's really good art. I think the art in this is actually pretty good. It does a really good continuation of the characters. This feels like the main protagonist. This feels like Marla. This feels like Tyler. And that they're all horrible people, and they're honestly probably worse together than they are apart. And they try to make it out that Sebastian and Marla are in love again by the end. And I'm like, yeah, and how long till she's bored again and then tries to bring Tyler Durden out? I have a hard time believing she has any self-control, because the reality is, I don't think she loves Sebastian at all. The only person she's ever cared about is either herself or Tyler. And just only likes Tyler because he's good at sex. But I think, if I remember correctly, the book says she has a history of picking the worst person for her. And I don't think either version of Sebastian is the right person for her. It's fine. It doesn't hurt Fight Club, book or film. It just makes it a little more bizarre. But I honestly can't recommend it. It's too confusing, and it's just not. It doesn't really add much to it. If anything, it kind of lessens it to make it that Tyler is more than just the split personality or the imaginary friend or whatever he was in the first one. Making him this actual disease that's corrupting things is just bizarre. And one of the weird things that weirded me out in this book is there would be times when Tyler switches, or Sebastian switches into Tyler, and everyone would instantly know. And it's we know as the readers because it switches the look of the actor, or the look of the character, as he goes from the brunette to the blonde. It goes to the more Brad Pitt-looking one. But the people that are looking at him, he doesn't change, except for his personality. And it's okay, well, if you get 5 seconds, you might do that. Yeah, except for, the scenes where he's, snapped his finger. It's all you see is a bruised face. You don't see Tyler. How did he know this at the end? It's confusing, and it's weird, and I do find it. I did like the fact that people could talk to Sebastian when he was Tyler and figure out he was Tyler really quickly. But it's still bizarre that they would all pick it up almost instantaneously. Yeah, it's just man. I think I'm kind of done talking about this one. This one hurt a little bit. It hurts to think about. My friend Carrie wrote when I did one of these, I love listening to these reviews. I'm sorry that it hurts you so much. And I'm well, I don't think any of them has hurt me as much as this one did. This one just makes my brain ooze out my ears. It's yeah. It's not because it's dumb, but because and not even because it's so weird, just because it's so all over the place and but also compact, but also confusing, and it hurts. I'm not thinking about this anymore. Happy reading, y'all. Until next time.